Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. So we've had such a lively plunge into the life and view and writings of Ehi Dogen. It's been wonderful. We're coming into our final session, and I'm grateful that our dear friends Kathy and Norman Fisher are here to share their perspective. And Kaz will be introducing them. Thank you, Kaz, but hold on. So just to give you the shape of the day, I also want to welcome our wonderful online participants. I think we have, this is kind of astonishing. I didn't know Dogen was so popular, but it might be because everybody loves Norman and Kathy. Over 900 registrations for the online portion of this wonderful seminar. So it's beautiful that so many people are interested in the work and views, as I said, of Ehi Dogen. After Norman and Kathy finish their presentation, we'll have a short break, and then we'll come together and have the final kind of confab with our faculty, with Stephen and Ruth, and I think Genzan in Kyoto is up still, and Henry, myself, and so forth. So most grateful. And then we'll conclude the seminar with the 4 vows as usual. And then I'm going to ask that our weekend friends depart the Zendo, and Monchin and I are going to meet with our Zen Circle community in gratitude. And then at 12:30, we're having lunch, and also we're celebrating early Kaz's 90th birthday, 90 years young. So it's, as Kaz said, de-aging. And I want to express a particular thanks at this beginning, in the beginning, to Kaz, whose translation work has brought us all into Dogen's world. And I just am so grateful for his work and also his relationship to Upaya for all these decades of bringing his teachings, his translations, his calligraphy, his social action perspective into our midst. And he's been here since day one in our community, and we're incredibly grateful. And also, thank you so much for your donations, which really support the faculty, makes it possible for us to take care of our teachers, so don't hold back. And finally, thank you, Norman and Kathy. I know your son is getting married in this space tomorrow, which is wonderful. You hadn't that far out? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to check. I heard the rumor. And before that happens, we're going to actually clear the Zendo, but keep the camera intact, because Cristiana Figueres, who's the architect of the Paris Climate Accord, and Rebecca Solnit and I are doing a short film series, 6 short films on climate. But we're going to move right into it after lunch to do the first few episodes. So we're just going to ask you to reset the Zendo, and so that we can get to work right as we conclude our luncheon celebration of Kaz's venerability. Kaz.
Hello, everyone on site and online. So nice to see you. This is the last day, last morning of our Dogen Seminar at the Upaya Zen Center, with the theme of aspects of awakening. And we've been covering some aspects of awakening this weekend. But there is much more to do. So we have our distinguished friends to be here to help us. How are you? I hope you are all fresh and young. Don't worry, so am I. It's my pleasure to introduce Kathy and Norman Fisher. They have been living and practicing at the Green Gulch Farm, part of San Francisco Zen Center, north of San Francisco in Marin County, on Mia Beach. And they were living there for many years, and now they have a wonderful house on the hill of Mia Beach, looking down the Pacific Ocean. I served as a scholar in residence at San Francisco Zen Center starting in 1977. So then Roshi Jones said, I translated Dogen, but actually Norman and other advanced Zen practitioners at San Francisco Zen Center and beyond, like Natalie Goldberg from kind of another kind of community. So over, I think, 33 people all together work together. So for 33 years to create our translation. So Kathy has been practicing and teaching at the San Francisco Zen Center community and beyond. And now both of them have kind of leading the everyday Zen community, kind of in North America. So Canada, US, and Mexico, and perhaps beyond. Wonderful, wonderful community. And then they have been teaching at the Upaya Zen Center for some years, sometimes together like this, sometimes like Kathy by herself or Norman by himself. So yeah, we've been kind of benefiting a lot from their teaching. Norman, from the beginning of the time, I knew he was a poet. He was teaching in school, and he kindly gave me editorial advice on my first book on Zen, Moon in a Dewdrop. So I remember that we had this, Dan Welch and I translated the chapter Uji. U means being or existence, Ji is time. So it's very maybe natural to translate it as time being, no Uji, no being time, or existence time. But it sort of came from Chinese idiom that means sometimes, or for the time being. So maybe for the time being seemed to suit our translation. And then I consulted with Norman and he said, well, yeah, for the time. If it's a pun, actually it's good to keep it like time being. So that happened. And one time, Roshi John, Norman, and I kind of led sesshin. And then the theme was time being. And then that time we talked about this wonderful new book, A Tale of Being Time, right? Or Time Being. So we really admired and then we enjoyed kind of quoting from the book. And then there was a young lady who was kind of assisting him. And usually people come and then during the meditation, people announce this, Jack Mary interview with Roshi Norman or something like that. But she was different. She would always go to the person who is sitting and whisper to the person, "Just come." And then I was very impressed. And then close to the end of the session, we said, "Oh, your name is Ruth. So why don't you come up and then talk about about this book, your impression." And then she came and then started talking. And then gradually, sort of it reveals that this Ruth was the author of the book. And most of us didn't know that. So most of us were surprised, shocked, and delighted. Norman is such a prolific writer, so he's been publishing many books of poetry and books on Zen and then other religious practices, literature. So it's hard to keep track of his kind of publications. And also he's a very generous recommendation writer, a blurb writer. He's a very, very, very generous. I used to say, "Oh, I'm not a good reader. I can't write. I can't read and then recommend other people's books." But I realized that maybe writing recommendation is a practice of generosity. We have to take time and then read, and then kind of bring some good parts, and then share it with the potential readers. So, thank you so much. Enjoy. Welcome to Upaya, and then our Dogen Seminar. Thank you so much.
Morning, everybody. How's our sound? Is it okay? It's pretty thrilling to see the Zendo so full after all this time when nobody could be in the same room together. It's a magical, you realize what a magical thing it is to be in the presence of other human beings. We took it for granted for so long now. I think it always makes me think of how profound Dogen's teaching of face-to-face transmission is, where he talks about that. You must be face-to-face, person to person. I don't know if this weekend you talked about that one. We're gonna say just a little bit because it's a long fascicle and no way we can go through the whole thing, but just we're going to say a little bit about Dogen's fascicle, continuous practice. And I've been thinking about this one for a long time because in this fascicle, Dogen, it's probably the longest piece in Shobo Genzo because it's part 1 and part 2, and both are pretty long. And in the beginning, Dogen writes several pages of kind of philosophical or theoretical words about what he means by continuous practice. And then after that, he gives example after example, starting with Buddha and ending with his own teacher, Rujing, of people who did continuous practice. And every example is very daunting because these are all people who really practice really hard, giving up everything, paying attention to nothing else but their practice, sitting night and day, burning through, cushion after cushion kind of. So I think about this because, well, for one thing, every one but one of the examples are monastics, celibate people who give up everything in their lives. So I think about our practice and here in America, where we're almost entirely lay people, even the so-called monks are lay people, even the priests are lay people. We're all lay people living in the world. Can we really and truly do continuous practice in the way that Dogen writes about it? This is a challenge and a koan for us, and we have to really understand it and investigate, how we can do that. So that's why I've been interested in contemplating this fascicle. So I'm going to begin by just talking about a little piece of what Dogen writes about in the beginning when he talks about continuous practice. And I'm going to start with a poem. But did I say how happy I am to be here? I think I didn't say that yet. I'm really happy to be here in this zendo that is a treasure, where I've sat many hours and haven't been here for a while. We tried to come here in the fall. We did. We just stayed in our room, though. We never left our room. I never set foot in a zendo. We were here for 2 weeks. And we saw a lot of Wendy. She was our doctor. We had COVID for 2 weeks. And we never got out of our room. So it's nice to be in the zendo again, and nice to be here with good friends, with Kaz, who, as he says, we've been working together a long time, know each other many decades, and Roshi Joan also, and everybody here. So I begin with a poem. Things that change go unnoticed. Why isn't it some other way? Because this is how we are made. Time has made us this way, and all that's happened in time, if anything at all has happened in time. Insect eyes are light-detecting columns consisting of many small units, each one itself an eye. Krill have a compound eye that detects movement, cannot read the New York Times. A tiny sea creature is transparent, with transparent eyes that make up 25% of its body weight. If that were true of humans, they would not be able to lift their heads on their necks, would drag them behind, or push them ahead with great effort. The hawk moth distinguishes color by starlight, with a crystalline lens, its corona focusing light like a camera. The senses are theories. I look away and theorize. The tomato remains as it was when I saw it. I theorize The world is real out there. Metaphysical realism. But if species see things differently or see different things with different eyes in their heads or elsewhere, which species sees the correct world? Experiences are symbolic constructions. Perception mirrors reality, and we see what's there. This cannot be so. No species sees what's there. All senses work to help us be here, though we don't know where or what this here is. Objects may have characteristics, but we don't know what they are. Selection, pressure, favors, love in a complex world in which the will to live is strong. Capitalism is unsustainable if it favors the few over the many, and none of our perceptions could possibly be true. Reality is utterly unlike our perception of objects distinct from one another in an external world. The true tomato, if there is a true tomato, is not the tomato of my mind, which is delicious, and I like it. Space-time is a letter I write that is ink and paper, and not the thought I have as I write. No there. It's all a bright idea. Space-time is a mode in which I think, not a condition in which I live, says Einstein, who nevertheless believed in location. But location seems also to be suspect. There are no limitations at all. What is consciousness? Where is consciousness? Everything, everywhere? Which means nothing, nowhere. Conscious realism. Everywhere, everything, all at once. Nowhere, nothing, ever. I am a convenience for getting along, and death is forgetting the space-time thought. That poem is actually lecture notes that I took during a talk given by our Shuso last practice period, Neil Shorstein. And we were studying the Shurangama Sutra, and he was giving a talk on the Shurangama Sutra. And that sutra is all about perception and how we are confused and imprisoned by our perceptions. Neil happens to be an ophthalmologist, which is why there's all this stuff in there about eyes of different creatures. And that's why I chose for the practice period the Shurangama Sutra. I thought he would really appreciate this as a scientist. Reality flows ceaselessly. It appears in us as our awareness, our consciousness that illuminates the actions of the senses, thoughts, and feelings. Bodies come and go, but awareness does not come and go. But what is awareness anyway? Nobody knows. In continuous practice, Dogen is telling us that when we do continuous practice, when we turn over our lives all the time, to practice. We begin to situate our lives in a space beyond our thoughts and our perceptions. This doesn't mean that we will have new and special, spiffy thoughts and perceptions, or that we will stop having thoughts and perceptions in the usual way. In other words, I don't think the practice promises that we will become fabulous mystics and total weirdos. No, I think we will have the same perceptions and thoughts. And yet, it does mean that we will feel life. We will feel life radically differently. We will feel what it means to be ourselves radically differently. And here's a quotation from Continuous Practice about this. Dogen writes, "The effect of such continuous practice is not hidden. Therefore, you aspire to practice. The effect of such continuous practice is not apparent. Therefore, you do not see, hear, or know it. Understand that although it is not revealed, it is also not hidden." Kaz's words. You know, the secret is that this is not about Dogen, it's really about Kaz. Kaz. Dogen is just an excuse for Kaz's teachings. Anyway, whoever said that, Kaz or Dogen or whoever it was, it's setting forth the paradox of our wonderful practice. And so it requires that we be a little patient with this. Because have you noticed, you always want something to be clear. It's either this way or that way. It can't be this way and that way at the same time when this way and that way are opposite to one another. But that's exactly the way it is. Here, Dogen is saying, we can actually see and hear continuous practice. And the tradition is full of stories like this. We hear and see continuous practice in the sound of the stream, in the song of the bird. We see it in a cloud or a mountain or a human face. And when we see continuous practice directly, it is so moving and so encouraging. We want to keep going. And yet at the same time, he's saying we don't see or hear it. We're just hearing the bird. It's just a bird. It's just a stream. It's nothing special. It's just somebody's face. No big deal. So that's the paradox. Practice, true reality, is not hidden. It's not something that we are going to experience once in a while in some special moment of transcendence. It's everywhere, always. We can't get away from it. And yet, we can't ever really see it or know it. Because our minds don't work like that. They can't work like that. The world is, in Dogen's word, as Kaz translates many times, undivided. The world is undivided. The world already is completely loving and completely perfect, with all of it, even the parts that seem horrifying. And yet, to us, the world will always be divided and difficult. And that is really marvelous. That paradox is so beautiful. He goes on, because of this practice, there are the sun, the moon, and the stars. Because of this practice, there are the sun, the moon, and the stars. Because of this practice, there are the great earth and the open sky. Because of this practice, there are body, mind, and the environs. Because of this practice, there are the four great elements, the five skandhas. continuous practice is not necessarily something people in the world love, but it is the true place of return for everyone. Because of the continuous practice of all Buddhas of the past, present, and future, all Buddhas of the past, present, and future are actualized. So this explains, how we make effort on our cushions and in our lives all the time. Because we see that everything is given. Everything is practice. And there's no way that you and I are going to get it right. Ever. So relax. And there's no way that you or I will ever get it wrong. Whatever we do, it will be continuous practice. So relax even more. But we do have to make effort. Sometimes a really big effort. And we make that effort not to make something different or better, but because we really understand that life is continuous practice. And continuous practice is effort. You have to walk forward all the time. One more step. Taking care of whatever it is that happens to be in front of you. Whether it's the teacup, the napkin, the aging or dying mother or friend, or one's own aging body and mind. That's just life. You don't stand still. You take a step forward. And we always do that. No matter what, we are going to do that. It can be hard, it can be easy. But anyway, it is a tremendous joy to be alive still and to have this life to take care of. So one more section and then I'll stop. This one is about something that's so important in our practice, the idea of the one great causal condition that Dogen mentions in his next section. Buddhist thought actually has a very sophisticated analysis of causality. Causality is central to the Buddhist teaching. And so there's a very sophisticated analysis of causality that I've tried to study. And so far, I haven't been able to really understand it. It's kind of complicated. There's a section in Abhidharmakosha, Bhasha, about it. I'll have to go back. I keep saying I don't understand it. I have to go back and try again, because last time I tried, I didn't really understand it. But it's an all-embracing thought that is at the center, as I said, of Buddhist teaching. And in the story of Buddha's awakening, that's the first thing that happens. He sees causality. He sees the pattern of causality. He understands how things are the way they are. He sees that everything causes everything, that life is a flow of multi-directional causality that flows through everything. And Buddha saw that pattern. He saw that there's nothing but causes and conditions mixing and flowing. Nothing that is changed, only change itself. When we chant in the Heart Sutra, all dharmas are empty. We're saying there are no dharmas. There's only the connection and the causality and the flow between dharmas that don't really exist as such. And what's the nature of this flow? Looking at it with eyes of compassion. The Buddha saw that this one great causal condition is itself compassion, reality. is compassion. And the whole point of this reality in front of us is to provide us with a sphere and a stage upon which we and all existing things can one day awaken. That's why Buddhas appear in the world, because of the one great causal condition. And this is the beautiful secret at the heart of our practice tradition. And of course, in this fascicle, Dogen will say, and I'll quote from him, that this is identical with continuous practice. He says, as it is not divided by what is hidden, apparent, existent, or non-existent, you may not notice the causal conditions that led you to be engaged in the practice that actualizes you at this very moment of awakening. So the one great causal condition, the compassion that is reality, has been working the entire time in your life. Things happened in your life. They seemed normal and reasonable at the time. But really, your life, the things that have happened to you, is much more than you think it is. You're here this weekend at Upaya to study Dogen. You think this is a reasonable thing to do. You've decided rationally it would be a good use of your time. You signed up, you came. It all makes sense. But there's a bigger reason, a bigger picture. The reason, this is Dogen now, the reason you don't see this is because becoming conscious of it is not anything remarkable. Investigate in detail that it is so, because the one great causal condition is no other than continuous practice, although continuous practice is not limited by the causal condition. So we don't see the true shape of our lives because, although the evidence of it is everywhere, it is rather unremarkable. It's not that noticeable because we have a lifetime's habit of thinking that things are otherwise than they are. So even the truth, which is right in front of us, we miss it. We think of it as some special, remarkable thing. And, maybe our religions are guilty of making it seem like a remarkable thing. Maybe even Buddhism, with its archetype of Buddha's great quest for awakening and his victory, breaking through to awakening, is also guilty of making the truth of our lives seem more remarkable than it really is. Profound truth is not remarkable. That's what makes it so marvelous and so astonishing. It's here all the time. Later on, he says, don't go running around looking for continuous practice. Don't go to monasteries. Don't go to workshops. Don't waste your time on all of this stuff. Stop where you are and look right where you are, because it's right there, It's amusing, isn't it? The lengths we go to find what's already right in front of our noses. It's actually quite comical. You could sort of argue that the entirety of religious life is one big joke. It really is. What a relief to inhabit our lives in this scope, at this level. to be able to know about your life. Yes, it's true. I am a pathetic schlemiel. It's true. I am a human being, and therefore, what could I possibly know? That's true. So I don't need to push that stone uphill and be somebody. Forget about it. And there has never been a life like this before. And there never will be. This is how Buddha appears in this place, in this time. And Buddha moves with me wherever I go. To know that about one's own life is to live a beautiful life. And the nature of that knowing is compassion. Let's just be generous. Let's just be kind. Let's just let go moment after moment, if that's who we are. We don't have anything to prove. We don't have anything that requires justification. We can just live and give, because that's what living is. Thank you.
Nice.
I'm a more practical girl than that. So when I read the continuous practice, it's very long. So I kind of skimmed through all the people, and I picked out one person that I especially wanted to speak about, and that is Guishan. I like Guishan very much. So what I'd like to do is kind of lead up to a little bit of talk about Guishan by introducing you to his teacher, Baizhang, in case you don't know. Baizhang, so Baizhang's years, let's see, Baizhang down here, 720, 814. So we're talking about like 500 years before Dogen, Tang Dynasty, China. I kind of default to Tang Dynasty China. I notice everything kind of comes back for me to Tang Dynasty China. It's hard for me to peel myself away. Maybe someday I will, but not today. So Baizhang was a disciple of Matsu, and an extremely important person in the history of Zen. He established monastic rules, a kind of updated version of monastic rules, which included working in the monastery, that monks will work. This was new. In the history of Buddhism, it was actually against the precepts for monks to work, to dig in the ground. But partly, probably for a variety of reasons, especially political, it seemed at some point in Chinese history for monks to grow their own food and be independent and be self-sufficient. So that Baizhang, he wasn't the first to do that, but he was the first to kind of codify it and make it be a way, the Zen monastic way. So he's famous for saying, "A day of no work is a day of no eating." And he held to that vow to the end of his life. His disciples tried to take away his tools because he was getting kind of old to go out and dig. So he refused to eat. So they had to give him back his tools so he could eat. That was Baizhang, very, very interesting person. So this is an excerpt about Baizhang from Andy Ferguson's book, which, if you don't know, what is it, Zen, Chinese Zen lineage? Is that what it's called? Heritage? Chinese Zen heritage. Do you have it in your library here? It's a really great book. So here's what he writes. no, here is what Andy Ferguson writes about Baizhang. Here was a Zen teacher of clarity who recognized that understanding the nature of the mind and observing the wheel of birth and death is not the final goal of Zen practice, but its source. He demonstrated that while the nature of consciousness is that it is not in the domain of the individual, the physical body is its vehicle. And he taught that overemphasis on mind while degrading the role of body leads to unethical behavior and nihilism. I'm going to read that again. It's the punchline. He thought, and he taught that overemphasis on mind while degrading the role of body leads to unethical behavior and nihilism. And for me, that sets the ground for Dogen's fascicle on continuous practice. When we read that fascicle with our body practice, we, as Westerners, but probably not only as Westerners, we default to mind, and our body kind of tags along behind us. We manage to clean it up and get dressed, and the rest of the time we're pretty much in our mind. And so this is Dogen's teaching. This teaching, the history of Zen's teaching, is a reset on that. It's the body. It's not the mind, but it includes the body. The body is the practice, and the mind also, but not at the expense of the body, not degrading the role of the body. And he's talking about it leads to unethical practice and nihilism, which is that's pretty interesting. And I think that for me, it touches on our astonishing ability to deceive ourselves, to justify all kinds of things, and to do things that make a lot of sense when we think about them, but not so much sense when our practice is in our body. So that's Baizhang. That's just a little snippet about Baizhang. Here's Guishan, Andy Ferguson's statement about Guishan. Actually, this is Andy Ferguson quoting the teachings of Guishan. The mind of a person of the way is forthright and undevious, with no front or back. It is neither deceitful nor deluded, and at all times it is watchful and straightforward, never covering the eyes nor plugging the ears. I'm going to read that again. The mind of a person of the way is forthright and undevious, with no front or back. It is neither deceitful nor deluded, and at all times it is watchful and straightforward, never covering the eyes nor plugging the ears. Such a mind is realized when emotions do not chase after things. Such a mind is realized when emotions do not chase after things. So this, I wanted to talk about some of the excerpts from the fascicle continuous practice in the context of those statements, and in the context of thinking about how Baizhang and Guishan are both talking about full body and mind practice, not imaginative, not intellectual, which, again, I'll say that for me, I think we, without knowing, without realizing it, default to imaginative and intellectual. And so this practice brings us back to the body as body, and including the mind. So I think Norman may have mentioned some of these, but that's okay. It's good to hear them twice, don't you think? The power of this continuous practice confirms you as well as others. It means your practice affects the entire earth and the entire sky in the 10 directions. Although not noticed by others or by yourself, it is so. And the passages I chose kind of reiterate that point. Although not noticed by yourself or others, it is so. And what is so? The practice confirms you as well as others. It means your practice affects the entire earth and the entire sky in the 10 directions. Continuous practice is not necessarily something people in the world love. How funny is that? But it should be the true place of return for everyone. And for me, that is the clearest statement about what we are doing when we practice meditation. We are returning. We are constantly returning. We go flying off to Never Never Land. Oh, we are returning. We just return. And the true place of the true place of return for everyone is nothing special. It's like you might not even notice, because it's so much our life. We can't really perceive a category or a boundary. It is so much exactly our life. We return to exactly our life. And there's an aspect to that which is, same old, you know? And there sometimes is an aspect of, I'm home at last. There's any number of aspects to this commitment to returning and returning. The effect of such sustained practice is sometimes not hidden. Sometimes it's not hidden. Mostly it is, though, apparently. Mostly it's hidden. Every now and again it's not. The effect of such sustained practice is sometimes not hidden. Therefore, you aspire to practice. The effect is sometimes not apparent. Therefore, you may not see, hear, or know it. Understand that although it is not revealed, it is not hidden. So I read that and I think, right, that really is right where we live, right in the stuff of wherever we are, you know, in a busy moment, in an angry moment, in an anxious moment, wherever we are, that is our life, and that is our continuous practice. It's not that there's something wrong with that and we should look for something better. That looking for something better is, you know, it's a habit. So when we spot it, we can just return, just come on back. As it is not divided by what is hidden, apparent, existent, or non-existent, you may not notice the causal conditions that led you to be engaged in the practice that actualizes you at this very moment of unknowing. I'll read that again. And as it is not divided by what is hidden, apparent, existent, or not existent, you may not notice the causal conditions that led you to be engaged in the practice that actualizes you at this very moment of unknowing. So we, you know, as you probably know, we talk a lot about not knowing. Not knowing is nearest, is one of our koans. But this sense of unknowing, of not saying, oh, I get it. It's the unknowing. It's that energetic what, that is such a it's our life. That's our life. The reason you don't see it is that becoming conscious of it is not anything remarkable. So the quality of unknowing is kind of like our home base quality. And it's so home base that we kind of don't notice it. And here's the last excerpt I have. This is about, it's the second to the last. This is Dogen's words about Guishan. Guishan, like many of the ancestors, had what we would call a really hard practice, really austere, really simple, and really committed. Guishan, who would later become Zen Master Dayuan, went to the steep and rocky Mount Gui immediately after receiving a confirmation of enlightenment from Baizhang. He mingled with birds and beasts, assembled a thatched hut, and tempered his practice. While living on acorns and chestnuts, he was not intimidated by storms or snow. Without temple or property, he actualized continuous practice for 40 years. So there's many stories about such people in the history of Zen, and Guishan was one of them. And I want to say just a bit, when I want to talk about Guishan because I really love this guy, and also because one of his disciples is Liu Tiamo, one of the really awesome women Zen teachers. And there were probably many, many, many more awesome Zen teachers. We know there were, but their record was not carefully kept. And so we don't have a lot of record of them. We have some. So Liu Tiamo, there's only a couple of stories about Liu Tiamo and Guishan, one actually, and then one about somebody else. And it's so sweet and affectionate. Do you know this one? Liu Tiamo comes to visit Guishan in his temple, and he says, "Old cow, so you've come," which means, it sounds like an insult, right? But he loved water buffalo. He just loved water buffalo, and he wanted to be reborn as a water buffalo. That was his thing. He wanted to be a water buffalo, and so it was a very high compliment to say, "Old cow, so you've come. You're a water buffalo like me." And she said, "There is a great festival on Mount Wutai tomorrow. Are you going, Master?" And it turns out that Mount Wutai was like a very long way away, and it wasn't possible. It was just, one of those Zen questions. And he lied down on the floor. He just lied down on the floor. And she then turned around and left. So it's this charming, like, little dance between them, no coming, no going, and no here and no there. And for me, when I read it, it has a very warm spirit to it, very affectionate and warm spirit. Anyway, that's one reason I picked Guishan. So he turned out after 40 years, he did somehow acquire a temple. But for 40 years, he had this austere practice, apparently living on acorns and chestnuts. Maybe there were some other things, and living among the birds and the beasts, and assembling his own thatched hut. So he had that kind of like just day after day after day after day for 40 years, practice, commitment. That's our Guishan. So maybe I'll finish with this. How's my time? Are we okay?
I think this section ends at 10:20, something like that. Is that right?
Well, I guess I could read this really slowly. Weak attempt at a joke.
It's a joke, sorry.
So this is Dogen's, this is the last section I wanted to read. Even if you might try to ignore it in order to hide a crooked intention and escape from it. Isn't that cool? Even if you might try to ignore it, we're talking about continuous practice and this sense of what Baizhang said, forthright, undevious, no front or back. It is neither deceitful nor deluded, and at all times it is watchful and straightforward, never covering the eyes nor plugging the ears. So here we have, even if you might try to ignore it, and in order to hide a crooked intention and escape from it, this ignoring would also be continuous practice. And we can trust the acceptance of this practice. Our task is to be forthright, and straightforward and not devious, but we can return to that and trust the practice. The practice is very forgiving. We can ignore it in order to hide a crooked intention and escape from it. And even so, this ignoring would be continuous practice. To go off here and there, here's a famous teaching of Dogen that we hear a lot. To go off here and there, looking for continuous practice, appears similar to the aspiration for it. But it is like leaving behind the treasure at the home of your true parent and wandering poor in another land. Wandering through wind and water at the risk of your life, you should not discard the treasure of your own parent. While you were searching in this way, the Dharma treasure would be missed. This being so, continuous practice should not slacken even for a moment. So that's lovely. And we have this really wide open, generous sense of continuous practice. Yeah, it kind of includes all my foibles, my mistakes, my bad moods, my good moods, my greedy moods, my whatever moods, and my bad decisions. Continuous practice is inclusive of all of it. And our work is to come on back home with the faith that home is the Buddha land, and we are worthy of dwelling in the Buddha land. That's about it for me.
Thank you so much, dear Kathy, dear Norman. The perfect words to complete this time of teaching. And I would like to invite us now to take a 10-minute break, and we'll reconvene with our faculty up in front, and with Genzan and Stephen and Ruth pinned. So thank you so much. So we'll reconvene at 10:13. So thank you, Norman and Kathy. That was very helpful for many of us. this vision of continuous practice, whether it's visible or invisible to us. Genzan, what time is it in Kyoto?
It's tomorrow.
No, say what?
Not today, it's tomorrow.
Oh, what time is it tomorrow?
1:17.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for persevering into the early morning hours of tomorrow. And Ruth in her Erie in the Northwest, and our beloved Stephen in Florida. Thank you so much for representing Sanity and Dogen in Florida. Sorry.
It is a contradiction in terms, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. So the seminar's focus has been on aspects of awakening. And what I'd like to do is to invite our faculty, and it's kind of far out that we're pretty amazing, this lineup here and also online. Really rarely do we have the chance to converge in this way. It's very, very special. I'm incredibly grateful for you all dedicating this time to the founder of our school. And I'd like us to go back to where we began at the beginning, which was to look at, continue to explore what we mean, or Dogen means, by aspects of awakening. How have we touched into that? Bring that summary of all that we've learned and studied in these few days together through the lens of Dogen's life and vision, what Dogen means by awakening. And Stephen, I'd like to begin with you as we began our teachings yesterday with your scholarly reflection.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to Norman and Kathy for their very inspiring talk on Gyoji. If we look at the range of topics that have been discussed, and as I mentioned on Friday night, I like to see things from a kind of from the standpoint of Dogen's chronology, from how he worked out different stages of his life and teaching career, and tried out different styles of giving lectures and sermons and writing essays over the course of the career, especially in the last several decades after he returns from China and establishes his temple first in Kyoto, and then a Heiji temple in the mountains north of Kyoto. And so one thing we started to talk about yesterday, and that I think really comes into play with today's talks, is on the question of chronology, is that we had a range. So Henry talked about Fukanza Zengi, which was often considered the very first thing Dogen wrote when he came back from China. In China, he wrote about 50 poems, Chinese style poems, but the only prose writing was a short a couple of paragraphs about Myozen's relics that he brought back with him from China to Kyoto. So Fukanza Zengi really is the first substantial writing in Dogen's career, probably dated 1227. There's been debates about different versions of it and revisions, and maybe, but it's pretty clear it was done in those first couple of years after Dogen returned. And then at the other end of the spectrum, I talked about Hachi Dainin Gaku, aspects of 8 aspects of awakening of great people, which was the very last thing that we know that Dogen wrote for sure. It may not have been the final, final essay, but it was the last dated one that we can confirm being at the first month of 1253. And one thing that we talked about with those two pieces of writing is that they're fairly straightforward. They're instructive. They're teaching a lesson on Zazen in Fukazen Zengi, of course, and on the precepts and the 8 awakenings of great people. And so we can say that at the beginning and at the end of Dogen's teaching career, from 1227 to 1253, so for those 25 years, he wanted to present a clear case that could be considered a summary of his view of essential Buddhist practice and would be well understood by a full range of followers, from the most advanced monastics that were studying with him to the lay community that was attending some of his talks and ceremonies at Aheiji, and Aheiji had developed certain policies to try to incorporate novice monks coming from different parts of the country, and also the local lay followers who wanted to attend some of the assemblies at Aheiji. And then in the middle, we have from the middle period, from the early 1240s, when he's finishing his time in Kyoto, and then kind of suddenly, mysteriously leaves for the mountains in the summer of 1243. In that period, about 6 or 8 months before then, we find him writing the Gabyo fascicle, painted rice cake, that Ruth talked about, and and of course the Gyoji fascicle, continuous practice, that Norman and Kathy discussed today. And one thing we said yesterday, and I think Ruth confirmed that in her comments, was that that middle period, that's the rich period where most of what we know for the of the main part of the Shobogenzo is from those years, from 1240 to 1244. So the great majority of fascicles are from those years, and they are very puzzling, perplexing, impenetrable, fireworks going off in terms of Dogen's use of language and paradox, and spinning things around and making us think from sentence to sentence, from phrase to phrase, what does he really mean by this? There's double negatives and triple negatives, and then reversals of those coming very quickly, so that our heads are left spinning. And he really indulges in that aspect of it, and that's that's probably what we know and love the best. If somebody said, well, what is Dogen like, and we're thinking to ourselves, oh, what's really Dogen, it would probably be examples of that kind of use of language, and not so much the straightforward. On the other hand, when we think of the practices that Dogen endorsed, yes, it's Zazen and precepts from the more straightforward period. So to make one more comment for now on Gyoji fascicle, continuous practice, I think both Norman and Kathy kind of zeroed in very nicely and in complementary ways on the fundamental paradox that's in a paragraph towards the beginning of the fascicle, just before the list begins. So the list of early masters, beginning with Shakyamuni and including mostly Tang Dynasty masters like Wei Shan, but also including a couple of examples of more recent ones from Dogen's standpoint, from the Sung Dynasty in the 11th century. Before that list begins, he has these, very intense philosophical discussion of Gyoji. And he also said, in addition to the sayings that were pointed out, he also says that, flowers blooming and falling are Gyoji. Mirrors being polished and mirrors smashing are Gyoji. And as it was pointed out in the talks this morning, you can't get away from Gyoji, whether you want to or not. You're always in Gyoji. And the smashing mirrors mean mistake after mistake is a form of Gyoji that will get you closer to a genuine realization. And the polishing of the mirror, as we know from the famous koan with Manzu polishing the mirror, in a way, polishing the mirror doesn't necessarily get you any closer than smashing the mirror, because if you use what Henry referred to as the instrumental model, that will be self-defeating, because you're seeking for the horse that you're riding on. So the grand question is, how do we make about these of these three stages, early, middle, and late stage? Is it there's different methodologies Dogen is using, different sources that he cites, different ways of referring to the aims for practice that he's trying to promote. But in the end, probably most of us would feel that there's an underlying consistency, a way that Dogen had, and he was looking for different avenues to try to get that across. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Following our sequence, Henry.
Thank you very much, everybody. Great to be with you this morning, and wonderful to be so helped and sort of guided to a very large and spacious and rather beautiful kind of view of things by Norman and Kathy this morning. Thanks so much for that. I wanted to just say another note on on this sort of non-instrumentalizing that I talked about, because I know I've had a number of people. There was a comment yesterday from the Zoom like this. What's this about? Surely we must use it for something, And then Kaz sort of corrected me. Of course, it's useful, and of course, I mean, the way I want to say a couple of things. I'll be as brief as I can. One is that, I know many of you will be familiar with, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi with his study of flow states from the 70s, 80s, 90s. He talked somewhere about, autotelic activity and even an autotelic personality, meaning by autotelic, as if I get it right, that doing things for their own sake. We've often heard us folks in the Zen world, the Buddhist world, when washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. And of course, the sort of strategic mind says, well, hey, you can't fool me. I'm washing the dishes to get them clean. I know I am. But actually, as a point of sort of practice, as a steering point back to exactly the continuous practice that Kathy and Norman evoked so beautifully just now, Of course, Dogen does in the fascicle in his rather grand way with that huge sweep through the lineage, As a point of returning to that, it's tremendously helpful that can we actually, nothing grand about it, just sort of know that we're picking up a cup and we're putting a sponge to it, and that there's foam and water and it's warm, and can we actually just experience those things for what they are? And the invitation that is offered by that, or even might even say a sort of doorway that kind of attentiveness offers, is really to a wider world. It can be like a flower opening, that suddenly this world we're in, we really notice it. And our sense of things broadens and opens, and it can be, and this is not, again, it's nothing sort of exalted. It's just, you could say, it's just taking the time to appreciate, the simplest things going on. And, when we all know the story of Layman Pang, my miracles are chopping wood and drawing water. Well, what if, that's not an idea, but really something, a practice pointer? So wouldn't the heart of our practice, as Dogen has given it to us, being Zazen, wouldn't the same thing apply there? What if I'm not trying to reach somewhere else, but instead Zazen is itself sort of enough, just the way it is? I mean, why not try that as a practice pointer? And sure, there may be many other ways to approach, well, there are many other ways to approach meditation. Of course, we know 100 million in the US have tried mindfulness, 40 million do it regularly to de-stress, to help their anxiety. And is there anything wrong with that? Well, of course not. But maybe there's other ways too, and Dogen is offering one. And maybe, in a sense, the less, you might even find that the less instrumentalizing we do, the more effective it is. The very, stress we might be wanting to be free of will be freer of if we're not so hell-bent on getting rid of it, for example. So.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. This reminds me or brings up a question in relation to the fascicle. I mentioned the first evening, Hotsu Bodaishin, which is a fascicle that really points in a quite unique way to the value of cultivating the aspiration to awaken in order to benefit others. So this is, a nice compliment. I don't want to say different, but a compliment to this apranahita, or aimlessness. And I'm thinking very much about the research on compassion, where the compassion research points to what's called non-referential compassion, or compassion without an object. In other words, in the sort of beginning of our practice, we would possibly use a motivation to engage in this practice, not necessarily for, quotes, small self-improvement, but as a means, a upaya, that arises when we look out on the world and we think, whoa, there is a lot of suffering out there, and no small quotient in here as well. And so, at a certain point, there is compassion with an object. In other words, the perception of suffering beings. But then, as this practice in the spirit that Henry is sharing potentially develops, the object disappears, and it's all subject, if you will. And I think it's very interesting to explore sort of these three valences, sitting just to sit, which is, it's also pointed to in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, just sitting, just in the body. The second is this practice that is based on the cultivation of the bodhisattva vow perspective, and Norman actually used the word compassion a number of times in his talk this morning. And I think that he was speaking not so much about compassion with an object, but actually non-referential compassion. And so there's that aspect. And then there's the aspect that many of us are familiar with, which has to do with, in a certain way, the beginning, middle, and also the end of practice. I kind of love that the Dalai Lama gets up every morning at 3 and practices. You think, he's done it a lot. Maybe he doesn't have to do that so much anymore. But in any case, the ongoing cultivation of stability, where there is an actual sense of this metacognitive perspective that's engaged, where there is the small self-determination to work the edge, kind of like brushing your teeth in the morning. If you only went to your hygienist and didn't bother brushing your teeth, but every 6 months you went in for the big job, your hygienist would be pretty distressed. So it's this kind of ongoing experience of, taking care of one's own subjectivity, not apart from the intersubjectivity of our lived experience. So I just wanted to bring up these three things, and particularly, as I was listening, to what Henry's saying, I completely agree. I often sort of tease about the self-improvement capitalism that is, pervasive, not only in the West, in various parts of the East, but in terms of the sort of the economics, internal economics of practice. That practice, in the best, most deepest sense of the word, is completely non-referential. It's completely decentered. It's continuous. And I think that, I just pose that, in compliment to what you're sharing, Henry. Thank you. I would like to invite Kaz now, as you were the next speaker, to reflect. Thank you.
Thank you. Last night I said Zazen is useful. So I like to apologize to Henry that I didn't mean to deconstruct you or your point. I think, we get some good ideas, or we have self-improvement. We cannot avoid it. But we don't have to use Zazen as a tool to get, just let it come, anything natural come, and then just kind of enjoy. Like Dogen says, the Dharma gate of ease and enjoyment. That is the point. And so Steve has been kind of talking about this. Maybe one is Dogen's wisdom beyond wisdom. That sort of frees our kind of experience and thinking from normal way of differentiations, and then sort of doing some kind of crazy wisdom trip. So that's what Dogen does. But also, at the same time, always underneath, there is wisdom, conventional wisdom of living with boundaries and schedules and ethics. So that is always underline of not only Dogen, but all the Zen masters who are kind of known as crazy wisdom. They were actually following the strict monastic schedules and rules. And so, and then as Steve pointed out, that maybe at the end of Dogen's life, sort of this more underlying currents became more evident, and then kind of aspect of conventional or traditional Buddhist wisdom. And then the crazy wisdom somehow receded, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaz, so much. Just wanting to mention particularly in relation to the fireworks of Dogen's prose that some of us have loved and also been confounded by. Again, words used this morning by Kathy and Norman that I think are really important in the teachings of Dogen in terms of awakening, and that is straightforwardness. I just want to come back. This is a very, this practice, very straightforward. Our relationship to this world, straightforward. So I'd like to invite Genzan to reflect.
Kathy, Norman, so nice to see you. It's been a while. Loved your talk. I was just thinking while listening to Steve this morning that, and also listening to Ruth. You know, I'm a chronic, you know, journaler. So, you know, I have to write in a journal every day because it's just, it's an itch, you know, it needs to be satisfied. And often I'll sit down and I'll write, and I'll have no idea what I'm going to write. I'll just write. And then I'll learn something that came up for me that I wasn't expecting it to come up. Kind of like nuclear explosions in Zazen, you know, if you're caused. But, you know, there's some learning there that comes out of that. And then sometimes it's you know, just for the playfulness of it. And when there was a question in the chat, the Q&A at some point where someone asked this question, which was, you know, Dogen seems to be so often so impenetrable. Do you think he did that on purpose? And that's not the first time I've heard that question, you know, and I think my answer to that is no, I don't think he's trying to be impenetrable on purpose. And you know, we shared before this like for Dogen's, you know, this is the way and everything else is the way of demons and outsiders, and you can mumble chants all you want but you'll get nowhere, his cranky kind of side. But I think that we should also credit Dogen for being incredibly loving and joyful and playful, and that he's really playing with language and playing with the teaching and playing with his understanding and playing with his mind in a really open-hearted and joyful way, kind of like pulling back the curtains and going, hey, you know, this is what it's like to be me. And I think that we don't talk about that very much. You know, the stern Dogen maybe sometimes overwhelms the joyful, playful Dogen and his you know, just his love of language and his love of sharing experience. And I really hope that maybe instead of thinking so much about Dogen as being impenetrable, we can kind of just engage in him with play. You know, we don't even necessarily. It's like you know, sometimes, you know, children will come up to you and they'll explain this whole narrative of this world that they're living in. And the logic of it kind of doesn't, you know, necessarily work for you, but it obviously so works for them, you know, and you can touch their hearts through that. And I think Dogen can touch our hearts, even when maybe his words are not, you know, going through cognitively, you know, in our mind in a certain kind of way, you know. So that's something that came up for me. But I also like to say that, you know, I've said this before about Upaya. It is amazing the number of teachers that Upaya offers up to the world, and to be able to go to a place that's so dedicated to offering so many, as you know, my teacher would say, valences, you know, so many different viewpoints on the Dharma. And so this whole weekend for me has just been like, you know, kind of a prism and looking at this way, this way, and this way. And I think the reflections will continue for a while. So thank you.
Thank you, Genzan. Ruth.
There. Can you hear me? Wow. There's so much. I was thinking about how, in a way, we started with the end of Dogen's life, and then we went to the beginning of Dogen's life and his writing, and then we got spun around in the middle, and then came back to continuous practice. And just to reiterate and sort of condense what Stephen said, it's I think we got such an all-inclusive experience of Dogen. You'd almost think that we'd planned it that way, but we didn't. And that I loved the way that the talks talk to each other, and I felt that particularly with Norman's talk and Kathy's talk this morning. I really, there was so much there that I really appreciated. And so some of the aspects of awakening that sort of rise to the surface for me over the weekend. First was Roshi, when you said, awakening is non-harming. And I think we've seen that thread move throughout the weekend, and again, sort of turning in different ways. And I was thinking about one of the questions yesterday about not knowing, which of course came up today too in Kathy's talk, about not knowing and the kind of linguistic confusion, the maelstrom that I certainly encountered in Gabyo, and that Genzan just reframed in such a lovely way, and that Kaz spoke about as well. Sorry, I'm trying to bring together a lot of different things here, but the playfulness is a kind of not knowing. And Kaz Sensei mentioned that Dogen was living between or working between two languages, working between Chinese and Japanese, and and that a lot of the linguistic play that he does, I think, comes from the translator's dilemma of not knowing. There's a being suspended between two languages like that. There is this area of not knowing, of finding that ineffable sense of meaning there that you want to convey, you want to move it from one place to another, and it's so difficult to do that. And so the juxtapositions and the paradoxes and the moving language around, trying to make one syntax fit another syntax, I think that there's a kind of play involved there, and a kind of wildness too. And I was thinking too about the groundlessness of not knowing, of being creatures who work in language, and finding oneself without words, which is kind of where I am right this minute. Finding oneself in a situation, trying to convey the ineffable, and how vulnerable that makes us, how difficult it is to be creatures of language and find oneself wordless. And that ties back somehow to, in a way, it sort of ties together. I'm sorry, I'm going on here. It ties together the emptiness teachings, as well as the kind of grounded, continuous practice, zazen focused, Fukan Zazengi kind of teachings as well. In that, both of these practices are about non-separation and about the cultivation of faith, which is not a word that we think of in Zen that often, but it seems to me that that the continuous practice, that zazen, that that we've been talking about, that precept practice, this idea of return, of coming back to the true place of return for everyone, to coming back to that open state, that vulnerable state of not knowing, that this is what brings it back to non-harming. This is what brings it back to compassion. And it's that intimacy of not knowing, intimacy being a kind of vulnerability, being a kind of openness where all of the walls of self just, drop away. Stephen wrote a paper called Just Sitting and Just Saying. And it seems to me that language can be that as well, can be a kind of just sitting, just saying. So that's what I have to offer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Dear Norman.
Well, I'm meeting Henry for the first time, and it's great to see Genzan again. Ruth, I see from time to time. Not such a big thrill to see Ruth, I see Ruth. But Stephen is one of my heroes, and I read all of Stephen's books, and I've never met Stephen before, and I thought Stephen was going to be here, so, oh well. Anyway, thanks for all your writing on Dogen, Stephen, and everything else.
Thank you so much.
Very nice to hear you.
We did meet.
Oh, we did. Whoops, I forgot.
at San Francisco Zen Center when Kaz's translation came out around 2009.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
Let's see. First of all, I have we have studies, Dogen study groups with our everyday Zen priests. So just a few of us getting together studying Dogen. And the last time we did this, we were, and this is in a way an echo of what Genzan said about the difficult Dogen, which I completely agree with. We were noticing as we were studying, by the end of the period of study, that we were so cheered up and so happy, and we had begun in a very glum state. This one's brother-in-law just died, and this one was really sick, and this one had getting over from COVID, and this one was getting old and feeling crotchety, and but by the time we were done studying Dogen, we were all really happy, So I kind of noted that, we know, oh, how about that? Studying Dogen cheers us up, makes us happy, kind of makes us feel different by the end of the study. So I think that studying Dogen, especially those so-called more difficult fascicles, but really it applies to all of Dogen, I think, even the crotchety parts, it cheers you up somehow. It gives you a feeling that there are possibilities beyond the ones that you see and know. And then just before, Chuck was saying, reminding me that we were at Tassajara some years ago studying Dogen, and Chuck was real happy. What a great time we had. And yes, we had a great time. You always have a great time when you study Dogen. And so I'm just saying that studying Dogen is maybe completely useless, but it cheers you up. It makes you happy. And I think that in and of itself, studying Dogen is a wonderful practice in and of itself. It's to me, it's a very big part of what continuous practice is. And I've been studying Dogen forever. And I'll tell you the story about, and I'll end with this little story, true story of how I got my master's degree in religious studies in something like 1975. and it was at a joint program with UC Berkeley and the Graduate Theological Union. So when I wrote my thesis, I had an advisor from a scholar, a proper scholar from UC Berkeley, and a guy who was, I think, a Baptist minister from one of the schools in the Graduate Theological Union, which is made up of several different schools. So I wrote my graduate thesis on Dogen, my master's thesis on Dogen. And I was able in 1975 or whenever it was to read pretty much everything available in English about Dogen, because there was not too much available in 1975. So I read everything about Dogen, and I wrote a general, introduction about Dogen. And then the main part of the thesis was my exposition, I think, of Genjo Koan. So I read Genjo Koan, you can imagine, again and again and again and again. And I sat down to explain Genjo Koan, and I started writing. And I think something like 36 hours later, I stopped, and I had written the most wonderful, brilliant exposition of Genjo Koan that could be imagined. And I went to bed, happy that I had finished my thesis. I woke up the next afternoon or morning, or whatever it was, and I read what I had written, and I could not understand a word of what I had written. It made absolutely no sense to me at all, even though when I wrote it, I was totally convinced that this was a brilliant. So then my graduate thesis consisted of my trying to decode and explain what I had myself written in that 36 hours. And it took a really long time. I think it took me months after that to try to make sense out of it. But here's the punchline is this. When I handed the thesis in, I remember, so here's my two thesis advisors, and the Baptist guy was very enthusiastic about my thesis, and he was convinced that this should be granted honors status. The scholar thought that this was the most ridiculous idea he had ever heard of. It was almost okay that I could pass my thesis on Dogen without reading Japanese. Maybe it was okay. I was, after all, in the theological union, maybe it was okay. But the idea that a person who couldn't read Japanese could get a master's honors on a thesis on Dogen struck him as the most absurd thing he'd ever heard of. And so I sat there in the room as the two of them argued their worldviews, their opposing worldviews, over this question. Can there be an authentic religious approach to Dogen? Or is that impossible if it's not grounded in the language? So that's only to say that for most of us, myself included, by no means all of us, but for most of us in the West reading Dogen, I was not joking when I said we're actually reading Kaz, or this one or that one. In other words, there's no doubt that the Dogen that I'm reading is not the Dogen that was read for hundreds of years or however many years people in Japan were reading Dogen. And even today, people reading Dogen in Japanese are not reading, I think, the same Dogen that I'm reading. So I think just to be aware of that, and I, of course, this is the phenomenon of spiritual practice, is that the idea of let's find the real Dogen and all conform to that is an absurd idea. There is no real Dogen other than the Dogen of our practice, of our heart, of our mind. But it's good to be aware of the limitations of everybody's view. And I'm certainly aware of my limitation. I realize I am kind of making up Dogen. I've got my own Dogen. I mean, I don't completely violate what I'm reading, but I know that what I'm reading is a translation, which has made choices and decisions and so on and so on. So we got to be grateful to everybody who is writing in English, who does know the Japanese, who is translating for us and commenting for us. That's why Stephen's many books are so important. So that's my story. I didn't get masters on that. And I agree with the scholar. No, he was right. You know.
Sorry about that, Norman.
I'm still here. I'm all right. I've gotten over it.
I was reminded of an experience I had in my 20s. I was a close friend with a man called David Finkelstein, who was a physicist. And I would go to his talks and have this feeling as he was speaking that I had, I could really understand what he was saying. And then, I'd walk out of the lecture hall and I think, what did he say? But there was something else. Something had changed inside of me in listening to him about the understanding reality. And I would suggest for those of us who are confounded, it's a great blessing. Some furniture that we haven't been aware of in our pre-conscious room has been moved around. And that's my experience with Dogen, not trying to grasp Dogen conceptually, but to let Dogen inhabit me and move my internal furniture without me even knowing it. Kathy.
Hello, Genzan, and hello, Ruth. So great to see you. And it's good to meet you, Stephen and Henry. And it's really a pleasure to be sitting with these wonderful, lifelong practitioners in front and around and beside me. So thank you for your practice. I wanted to share with you on the subject of the impenetrability of Dogen, an experience I had when Norman and I, a couple years ago, were teaching a little thing on the Zui Monkey by Dogen, which is short talks that he gave to monks and visitors. So they don't have that kind of intellectual density that the later fascicles have. They're kind of straightforward. So at one point he says, monks should not read poetry or literature outside of the Buddhist sutras. Monks should not do that. We do not read poetry. And then I think it was the next talk, he said, I love poetry. I love literature. I read it a lot. And he waxed on about that. And I thought, right, I get it. The guy's a human being, and he's expressing something at the moment which is true, but that doesn't mean it's the absolute last word on truth. He is a human being, and as we know, truth unfolds in each of us. And I also wanted to say, the point that I brought up when I was speaking was about continuous practice is inclusive. It's all inclusive. And whether we know it or not, whether we think it or not, is irrelevant. We are already in continuous practice. We're doing it all the time, whether we know it or not. And that is Buddha work. That is our Buddha life. We are already Buddhas. That is, we read that in Dogen over and over again. And I've been thinking about that a lot. And I'm thinking that, right, I'm thinking this, that not only is it our practice, but it's our responsibility to do this practice. Coming to understanding in whatever way that happens, it happens on its own, it happens in its own time, we can't control it, but coming to understanding through our effort, through our straightforward, undevious, continued or returning effort is our responsibility. And that's not such a stretch for us to understand when we look around the world we live in. We're not doing this for ourselves. We're not doing this, and we can digress and talk about how there's no self, but really we're not doing this selfishly. We're doing this because it's our responsibility. We're alive. This is our life. This is our only life. And this is what we're doing. So for me, I'm thinking that way about our practice, that it's not just, you know, making my life better or whatever. You know, it's my responsibility to do this practice. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And what an apt admonition at the end of this plunge into Dogen and his teachings. So my deep gratitude to our faculty, to Stephen and Genzon, Ruth, Norman, Kathy, Henry, and beloved Kaz. Kaz, we are here in part to thank you for your lifetime of opening the Dharma door of Dogen's writings for us and for so many. And we are so honored that you return here again to continue to challenge us. I'm so grateful. And Kaz's actual birthday is on October 4th, but we, you know, time is slippery in the world of Dogen. And we're going to be celebrating his birthday on two occasions. One is today. And so we look forward to the people who are here joining us for lunch and birthday cake at 12:30. And then we're going to celebrate it on September 6th at Green Gulch. And then he will, with Natalie and friends, celebrate it on October 4th. So bless your mother and father, so to speak. I also want to express profound gratitude to Noah, who is threading so much, including the tech, making it possible for, you know, hundreds of you not only to access the teachings in, you know, live, but also the recording of these wonderful talks will be on the resource page in perpetuity. And it's like a treasure house. You walk in to that resource page. And Noah, I'm just so grateful. And also you putting those up so quickly. They take a little bit of time. What is it called? To render? Yeah, to process or render. But they're accessible so quickly. And I'm just so grateful for everything you do for Upaya, the community, and the Mahasangha. And also the residents who hold this place, practice, really bring the sense of gravity and love into this. There, you know, quite a few are in the kitchen getting lunch ready, but the residents are really the heart and backbone of Upaya. And I just cannot tell you how important it is that the practice is continuous here. And I think many of you can feel that. And also to Bonnie, Richard, and our staff, and beloved Monshin, and Ami, and just, you know, Wendy, you know, Fushin. It's just, it's a real, you know, blessing to be alive in a time when there's so much that is heartbreaking. And there's also so much potential to be realized in this era. And may we, not in a non-instrumental way, Henry, not be separate from the truth of all suffering as it is, let ourselves let go into the continuous practice of being one with this world. And so we will conclude with the 4 vows and bid adieu to our online community and our wonderful online faculty. And there will be some final announcements. But just to remind all of you that your dana really makes this possible for us to offer these teachings freely in the world for, you know, for forever. And so please give generously and also to support our faculty. And now our 4 vows.
creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
We have one more thing to do that we forgot about from ancient times. It's Joan's birthday, actually today. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Roshi. Happy birthday to you.
Yeah, I had my birthday last year. It's an amazing thing, but it repeats itself.
Oh,
I'm lucky enough.
well, thank you. We're ignoring it this year, but again, thanks for embarrassing me yet again. This is the nature of our friendship, co-embarrassment. All right, dear online friends, we're going to liberate you from digital engagement, and we will just make a few simple announcements to our community gathered here. And thank you so much.